London in 2126 may find itself at a crossroads, dictated not by kings or wars, but by physics. By the early 22nd century, this city could have evolved into something its founders never imagined. But which London? That's the question that haunts climate scientists today. In one future, London adapts to a hotter, wetter world, building upward, fortifying against rising seas, engineering its survival meter by meter. The Thames becomes a controlled canal. The city lives in layers. Humanity bends nature to its will through concrete, steel, and determination. In another future, London faces something far more paradoxical: a frozen Britain in a warming world. If the Atlantic Ocean currents that have kept Europe warm for millennia suddenly collapse, an event scientists call AMOC shutdown, London could experience winters colder than Montreal, the Thames freezing solid, and a city built for temperate rain suddenly buried in snow and ice. Both futures are scientifically possible. Both are already being modeled, and the difference between them may come down to decisions being made right now. In this video, I use modern AI tools to construct what London might look like a century from now, under both scenarios, based on current climate models, engineering projections, and peer-reviewed research. What you're about to see is scientific projection already taking shape in research labs and climate conferences around the world. Let's start with the more familiar nightmare, the heat. The Thames Barrier 2.0. By 2126, the Thames Barrier, that iconic line of silver shells that has protected London since 1982, will likely be obsolete. Sea levels are projected to rise between 1.2 and 2.4 meters, depending on how aggressively humanity acts in the coming decades. What may guard London by then is something like the Thames Estuary Mega Barrier, a structure that could span nearly 3 kilometers across the river's mouth near Gravesend. Engineers are already designing systems like this for construction between 2067 and 2089, with gates that could rise 40 meters above the waterline when deployed, designed to withstand storm surges currently considered impossible. But the barrier would do more than hold back water. It could regulate tidal flow, generate power through integrated turbines, and monitor the salinity of the Thames in real time. London's survival may depend on a single choke point like this. From this angle, you can imagine the secondary flood walls that would line both sides of the river, stretching all the way into central London. These wouldn't be temporary measures. They would become permanent geography. The Thames could transform into a controlled canal, no longer the wild tidal river that defined the city for 2,000 years. On calm days, Londoners might gather along these walls to watch the barrier close during high tide, a twice-daily ritual reminding everyone that the city would exist by permission of engineering, not nature. Westminster, the fortified heart. This scene shows what the political heart of London might look like in 2126, viewed from the South Bank near where the London Eye once stood. The Palace of Westminster could still be standing, but it may no longer sit at the river's edge. Current plans suggest that between 2048 and 2071, a massive glass and steel flood barrier could be constructed around the entire Westminster complex, creating what engineers call a climate envelope. The building itself would remain untouched, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it would exist inside a protective shell like a ship in a bottle. Westminster Abbey, just beside it, would likely receive similar treatment. The medieval stonework can't be moved, so instead the Thames would be pushed back. Land reclamation projects could add 200 meters of new ground between the Abbey and the water, creating Westminster Gardens, a sloped park that would double as a flood spillway during extreme weather. Big Ben's tower, potentially reinforced with internal carbon fiber supports, might still chime every hour, but the sound would echo off glass walls and engineered berms, a reminder that even symbols must adapt to survive. During parliamentary sessions, officials would likely arrive not by car but through the Westminster Transit Hub, a subterranean station connecting the Elizabeth Line, the Thames River Bus, and possibly the London Hyperloop. Surface streets here could be reserved for pedestrians and emergency vehicles only. At night, the climate envelope might glow with embedded solar panels, a strange beauty born from necessity. The city, elevated London. This is what the financial district might look like in 2126, viewed from what used to be street level. But street level may not mean what it once did. Plans already exist for the City of London to begin constructing a second-story urban platform in the 2040s, an elevated network of walkways, plazas and buildings raised 8 meters above the original streets. The old ground floors would become basements. The basements would become flood channels. Skyscrapers like the Gherkin, the Walkie-Talkie and the Scalpel could still dominate the skyline, but they would rise from reinforced plinths designed to redirect water flow during storm surges. The spaces between towers would function as retention basins, filling with river overflow during peak floods and draining through automated gates once the danger passes. Canary Wharf further east might not be as fortunate. If projections hold, catastrophic flooding in the 2090s could breach its defenses, leading to abandonment and conversion into London Lagoon, a controlled wetland serving as both a nature reserve and an overflow zone for the Thames. Walking through the elevated city would feel surreal. Below your feet, shadowed canals would carry runoff and occasional boats. Above, transparent solar canopies would filter sunlight into dappled patterns. The city would have learned to live in layers. Remarkably, this could still be a place you can visit. The old street signs might remain, mounted on walls 8 meters below the platforms, like archaeological markers pointing to a London that drowned without sinking. Tower of London, the island fortress. Rising above the river, the Tower of London in 2126 may have returned to something like its original purpose, an island stronghold isolated by water. As the Thames widens and flood defenses reshape the riverbanks, the tower could find itself increasingly cut off. By 2103, the decision might be made to embrace this isolation. Engineers could remove the modern embankments around the tower and allow the river to reclaim its historic floodplain. The tower could sit on a fortified island, accessible only by drawbridge and water taxi. The moat, dry since 1843, might be refilled, not with water from the Thames, but with a carefully managed wetland ecosystem that buffers the fortress from storm surges. The crown jewels would likely remain here, protected not just by guards and vaults, but by 12 meters of engineered elevation and flood barriers capable of sealing the entire complex within minutes. During high tide, water would lap at the outer walls, and the tower could appear much as it might have looked in the medieval period, a castle surrounded by water, projecting power through sheer endurance. Scenario 2, the Amok collapse. But there's another London possible in 2126, one that climate models warn us about, but that we struggle to imagine. If the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the ocean current system that brings warm water to Europe, collapses before the end of this century, London's climate could shift catastrophically. Not gradually warmer, brutally colder. This could be London in winter 2126, 15 years after Amok collapse. The Thames, despite global warming, might freeze solid for the first time since 1814. Temperatures could regularly drop to 20 degrees C, conditions London was never built to endure. The flood barriers designed to hold back rising seas would face a different enemy, ice pressure that can crack concrete and buckle steel. The second-story platforms of the city would become essential for another reason. They'd be above the snow line. Ground-level London could be buried under persistent ice and snowdrifts that wouldn't fully melt until late spring. Westminster's climate envelope, designed to keep out water, would struggle to retain heat. Emergency thermal shelters might be constructed throughout the city, and the population could drop by nearly 40% as climate refugees flee to southern Europe and North Africa. The cruel irony, London's flood defenses would remain essential, because when spring arrives, the rapid thaw could create catastrophic meltwater floods, overwhelming drainage systems built for rain, not snowpack. Old London Bridge, demolished in 1831, would recognize this Thames. The river, slowed by ice and constrained by barriers, could create the same treacherous conditions that made Tudor navigation so dangerous. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. In this timeline, the Tower of London would truly become a fortress again, a place where resources are stored, where emergency government functions, where survival outweighs ceremony. Agriculture in southern England could collapse. The growing season might shrink to fewer than 100 days. Britain, for the first time in centuries, might not be able to feed itself. This isn't speculation. This is what the physics predicts if warm water stops flowing north. Buckingham Palace, the museum. This could be Buckingham Palace in 21 to 26, potentially long after it ceased being a royal residence. Following the climate crisis of the 2050s and possible constitutional reforms of the 2089s, the palace might be converted into the London Climate History Museum. Its rooms could house exhibits on the transformation of the city, scale models of the Thames Barrier evolution, archived footage of the Great Floods, interactive displays showing the Amok collapse scenarios. The palace gardens, once private, might become a public climate-resilient park, a living laboratory of species adapted to London's new normal. Mediterranean plants could thrive here. Olive trees, cork oaks, lavender fields where roses once grew. In the Amok collapse scenario, the palace could take on a different role: emergency housing. Its thick walls and central heating systems, once luxurious, would become survival infrastructure. The staterooms might shelter climate refugees from the north.
We have to stay here?
The ballroom could serve as a distribution center for thermal
Frost is
equipment
getting worse.
and food rations. Either way, the age of monarchy as spectacle may have ended. What would remain is stone, memory, and adaptation. The two Londons standing here looking forward at these possibilities, it's impossible not to feel the weight of choice. These aren't predetermined futures. They're trajectories, outcomes shaped by decisions being made in laboratories, parliaments, and UN climate conferences right now. One London adapts to heat and water, building upward and outward, engineering its survival while maintaining continuity with its past. The other London endures cold and isolation, watching the physics of ocean circulation betray centuries of climatic stability. Both futures would require sacrifice. Both would demand ingenuity. But only one lets London remain recognizable. The difference between them may come down to a single degree of warming, a single decade of policy action, a single current system holding together just long enough for humanity to change course. Through these AI constructions, we get just a glimpse of what it might be like to stand in that future, to look back at our moment and ask, did we choose wisely? If there's another city, another climate scenario, or another timeline you'd like to see projected into being, let me know in the comments. I'd love to keep building this journey into the possible with you. Thank you so much.